Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to dive into a forgotten civil rights law today, one that asks a really powerful question. Do the police actually have a legal duty to protect you?
So to really get our heads around this, we have to start with a pretty disturbing scene, one that really shines a light on a potential flaw in our justice system.
Okay, so picture this. We're not in the 1870s South. Nope, this is Hanover, Pennsylvania, in 1991. And this is just months after the whole world saw the videotaped beating of Rodney King. What happened was a white mob surrounded and threatened a group of interracial teenagers. It was a scene that felt like it was ripped straight out of the history books, like something from the Reconstruction era. But here's the really shocking part. The police? They were there, on the scene. Several officers saw the whole thing go down, the racist threats, everything. And they did nothing. They didn't stop the mob. And then, get this, when it was all over, who did they arrest? The victims, for disorderly conduct.
So this brings up a huge and honestly a pretty unsettling question, right? When the very people who are sworn to protect you just stand by and watch something like this happen, what can you do? Is there any legal recourse at all? Well, it turns out the answer might be hiding in a place most people have never heard of. It's an almost forgotten civil rights law, one that's been on the books since all the way back in the 1800s. It's called Section 1986, and what makes it so unique is that it's not about punishing someone for actually committing a crime. Instead, it holds them accountable for knowing a civil rights violation was about to happen and then just doing nothing to stop it. Now, to really understand Section 1986, you gotta first know about its partner in crime, so to speak, Section 1985. Section 1985 is the law that makes the conspiracy itself illegal. So if we go back to our Hanover example, this law would apply to the members of the mob who all planned together to terrorize those teenagers. And this is where Section 1986 comes in. This is its real power. It zeroes in on the failure to act. It actually creates a legal duty for anyone, and especially a police officer who knows about one of these conspiracies and has the power to step in, to actually do it. It's like it deputizes people on the spot to prevent these violations from happening. So how do you actually prove a case using this law? Well, it all boils down to three pretty straightforward things. First, you have to show knowledge. Did the person know a conspiracy was happening? Second, power. Did they have the ability to help stop it? And third, neglect. Did they refuse to act anyway? I mean, when you look at that Hanover case, it really seems like the police on the scene checked all three of those boxes. But that begs the question, right? Why does a law like this even exist in the first place? Well, to get the answer, we have to go way back in time, back to one of the absolute most violent periods in American history. So right after the Civil War, there was this period called Reconstruction. The whole idea was to rebuild the country and, crucially, to integrate newly freed African Americans into society. But groups like the Ku Klux Klan launched this just brutal campaign of terror and violence to stop that progress in its tracks. And if you look at this timeline here, you can see how it all unfolded. Congress passes the 14th Amendment, which promises everyone equal protection under the law. Sounds great, right? But down in the South, the local authorities and police were often either completely unable or, even worse, totally unwilling to stop the Klan. So the federal government realized it had to do something, and in 1871, they stepped in and passed what became known as the Ku Klux Klan Act. And guess what was in it? Yep, sections 1985 and 1986. Yeah, this quote really just says it all, doesn't it? This law wasn't some abstract idea. It was a direct, targeted answer to a very specific problem. Officials just standing by and doing nothing in the face of racist violence. And what's so wild is that this is the exact same problem that popped up 120 years later on that street in Pennsylvania. Okay, so all this history, it brings us to a much bigger conversation. A huge debate, really, about what the Constitution is even for. You see, a law like Section 1986 really puts two big ideas about the Constitution head to head. Is the Constitution just about negative liberty? You know, a list of things the government can't do to you? Basically a charter to make the government leave people alone? Or does it also create an affirmative duty, a promise that the government must step in and actively protect your rights, especially from private violence? And here's what's so fascinating. The same exact Congress that wrote the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause is the one that passed Section 1986.
Think about that. It really suggests that they believed the government had more than just the power to act. They believed it had a positive obligation to step in and make sure its citizens were actually protected from harm. So let's bring it back to today. Why does this 150-year-old law, something forged in the fires of Reconstruction, still matter? I mean, why are we even talking about it? Well, for one thing, it is definitely not just some historical relic. It's a real, potent legal tool for holding officials accountable when they just stand by while injustice happens. It pushes back hard against the idea that someone with a badge and a uniform can just be a passive bystander. It reinforces this really core idea that the government has a moral and a legal duty to protect its people. And ultimately, this forgotten civil right makes us all confront a really fundamental question about our society. You know, when you see the words "to protect and to serve" on the side of a police car, this law forces us to ask, what do we really expect that to mean? Is it just a nice slogan, or is it something more? Is it like the people who wrote Section 1986 clearly believed, a fundamental constitutional duty?